Since the very day the Google Pixel 2 smartphones were announced, which Google claimed would solve the battery life problem when it came to smartphones, you guys have constantly been asking that big question: does it actually do that? Well, right in front of us we've got the brand new Google Pixel 2 XL, and we're going to compare it to the Galaxy Note 8, iPhone 8 Plus, and the current always champion of these battery tests, the Oneplus 5. As we always do, we've equalized the brightness, turned Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth on, and everything else off. And we're going to check the battery life readings every 5 to 30 minutes. And after the first little session of Antutu, we're getting a bit of a surprising result. Weirdly enough, the iPhone 8 Plus is actually taking the lead, a phone which historically has tended to lose these tests. So what we're going to do now is pull up the camera and try and record some 4K video at 30 frames per second on all the phones. Whilst I will be using some synthetic benchmarks just to drain the batteries a little bit faster, for the most part I'll try and keep this as realistic when it comes to day-to-day usage as possible. And as you can see after the second reading, this is starting to make a bit more sense. The 8 Plus has fallen back into joint first place, and the Pixel 2 XL is first. One of the primary things people use their smartphones for is watching content, so we wouldn't even be doing the smartphones justice if we didn't show at least some of this. Now notice one thing over here: whilst the OnePlus 5, the iPhone 8 Plus and the Galaxy Note 8 are all running at Full HD or Full HD Plus resolutions, Google's Pixel 2 XL doesn't actually have the inbuilt option like the Note 8 does to scale its resolution down, so is in fact running at a Quad HD setting. And we need to bear that constantly in mind. Even though after the next reading it's fallen into third place just in front of the Galaxy Note 8, Quad HD or Quad HD Plus that we actually have here is a lot more pixels than Full HD and Full HD Plus. And so if the Pixel 2 XL ends up lasting anywhere near as long as the other three phones, it technically has the best battery of the bunch. Now notice it does have the highest capacity, 3520 mAh, compared to the OnePlus 5 and the Note 8 which have 3300. And I'm hoping this is going to somewhat offset that higher screen resolution. Time will tell. After having opened up Sonic Dash, a game which uses a fair bit of power but also the accelerometers, we're going to go full throttle. We're loading up Holo, which is an augmented reality app that uses not only the accelerometer, but the gyroscope, the camera, and the CPU and GPU. After the next result, things are starting to fall into place a little bit. We're starting to get more of the result I was expecting. We've got the OnePlus 5 at the front yet again at 74, the iPhone 8 Plus is now in last place at 67. And the thing we're really concentrating on here is the Pixel 2 XL, and at 70 it's kind of close to the OnePlus 5, much closer than you'd expect it to be given how much higher its screen resolution is. As we get further and further into the test, it gets more interesting. The Pixel 2 XL has managed to further close the gap between it and the OnePlus 5, which is really exciting, and the iPhone with the Samsung are very closely tied. After running a pretty extensive session of Geekbench 4, which is really pushing the CPU to the maximum, we're going to jump ship to Google Maps, which yes is not the most demanding app, but is the kind of thing you would be using on a day-to-day basis. On a bit of a side note, you can actually use this as a demonstration of the differences in color temperature. You can see the Pixel 2 XL has the coolest display among all the phones, and the iPhone 8 Plus by far the warmest. In terms of what's happening here, it seems like the Galaxy Note 8 is finally strengthening its lead over the iPhone 8 Plus. And to be honest, after having tested a lot of iPhone battery lives now, I have started to notice a bit of a trend. It almost seems like for the first few percent, they compete very well on battery life, and then they start to fall much faster. And it's very possible that this is programmed into iOS to perhaps give people an initial level of confidence after they've just charged their phone, and the battery is falling slowly to begin with, apparently. Alright, checking the phones just in between a session of Temple Run, the iPhone 8 Plus has finally gone below that 20% mark. So what we're going to do now is pull up Antutu benchmark to push all these phones to the limit until they finally call it a day. Whilst these are all plus-size smartphones and we should expect a good level of battery life, the fact that they have all lasted over 4 hours of grueling battery draining is still nonetheless commendable. And it's not much longer until the iPhone 8 Plus calls it quits. And surprisingly, the Note 8 is really not very far behind it. It has 5% when the iPhone has 0. So it would seem like even though the iPhone 8 Plus's battery capacity is significantly smaller than the Note 8's, its battery life is not necessarily that much worse, so it's using what it has a little bit more efficiently. And now we hit 4 hours 32 and the Galaxy Note 8 runs out too. So I'm going to continue to run the Antutu benchmarks on both those phones, and I'm going to tell you the results in just a second. But if you did enjoy this video, it would mean so much to me if you could support me by subscribing. In fourth place we have the iPhone 8 Plus. This is as expected. iPhones have famously had smaller battery capacities than their equivalent competitors, and whilst they do use them a little bit more efficiently, that wasn't enough for it to beat the Note 8 with 4 hours and 32. We then had the Pixel 2 XL just second place at 5 hours 01, and the winner was the OnePlus 5 at 5 hours and 3. However, considering how closely matched those two phones were in terms of battery life, it almost feels unfair to call the OnePlus 5 the winner. The Pixel 2 XL has a larger battery and is also using that larger battery much better in order to push a far higher resolution and still have the same battery life as the OnePlus 5. What would have been nice on the Pixel 2 XL would be the option to lower the display resolution for people who want even more battery life. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.